Hi guys, it is time for the Little Lady Bible Study, and I'm just gonna wait for some people to get on. We started a little early, just so we could chit chat and get some people on. So, when you get on, let me know you're here. Say hello, and away we go. Hello, Michelle. How are you? How are you guys holding up in this crazy time? Stinking COVID gets us, man. Before we get to the Bible study, like I said, we got on a little early, and we're just gonna chat for a second. You'll notice that I'm wearing a really cool hat. This hat is for the Solomon Foundation. You can kind of see it there. And this is a great place that you can invest and save money because they give loans to churches. So I think you should check them out because they're pretty great. And they gave me a hat. So, the Solomon Foundation. Today, our book that we're reading from is one that I have consistently been reading from. The Promises of God Storybook Bible. I'm going to flip it around so you can see. This is the story of God's unstoppable love by Jennifer Lyell. This is the one that Kayla's been reading from too. And so it's one of the books that we recommend for parents who are interested in what to get their kids. This is a good supplement. I do think you need to buy your children actual Bibles too, and a good Bible for little kids who are beginning to learn to read is like the Good News Bible. It's paraphrased, but the wording is so simple. The message, it's paraphrased too, but it's easy to read. But if you want something that's word for word, the NLT is a 6th grade reading level, and it's pretty good as well. So we like that translation a lot. So get them something they can make notes in and they can start reading on their own. It is never too early to start reading. So we like the Promises of God Storybook Bible. We also like the Jesus Bible. It tells how all of Scripture points to Jesus. So we are huge fans of that as well. Yeah, we're super excited. And one of the things that we want to encourage parents to do is go ahead and start talking to your kids about your faith. And this quarantine time is the best time to do it because you're stuck together. We actually ask parents to ask their kids hard questions. How do you know God's real? And let them wrestle with that. And then you guys can have continuing conversations about that because those questions are going to be asked to them at some point, like in middle school and high school and college. It's going to happen. So it's best to start preparing them as their children and have a safe place, their parents, a safe place to find those answers and those resources in. And if parents, you're not comfortable answering those questions, on our theboldmovement.com, we have a recommendations page, and it gives you access to all kinds of apologetics, authors, and websites, and they have tons of free resources available for you. Definitely check that out because we need to start teaching our kids apologetics immediately. The world's going to be challenging them, and we want them to be prepared. Well, I think it's pretty close, so let's go ahead and start our Bible story, and if people come on a little later, they can watch the replay if they want. I'm going to flip the camera around now. The Promises of God Storybook Bible. Actually, I'm going to make you look at my face while I find it, because I went to the cover to show you where it was, and then, of course, I clicked off the story. Oh, would you look at that? I just hit it. Hey, Ron Powell, how are you, buddy? Hey, Madison Marisek. Okay, here we go. You see how it's laid out? And this quilt was made for me. I just want to give a shout out by Linda McGlone at our church. She did a beautiful job. I freeze to death. And she actually put flannel inside of it. So it's like the best quilt ever. Okay, here we go. God will make people for himself and give them a land of their own. That's our big idea today. A promise in the stars. A long time after Noah died, another man had a soft heart toward God. His name was Abram, and he was married to Sarai. They had always wanted children but hadn't been able to have any, and they were way too old to have babies. So that's part of what makes this story and God's promise to Abram really amazing. One day, God told Abram to leave the home where he had always lived and begin traveling and not to stop until God told him. Abram obeyed God. He and Sarai packed up all their stuff and left, heading in the direction God told them to go. They left home without even knowing where he was taking them. That's how much Abram believed and loved God. After a very long time of traveling, they came to a beautiful land with all sorts of plants and trees that made food. But this land also had people living there, people who didn't want to share the land with Abram and his family. But God told Abram to take a good look around. God promised that one day he was going to give Abram this land. But he wasn't just going to give it to Abram. He was going to give it to Abram's family, one that would grow to include a son, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. Wait, did God say Abram was going to have grandchildren and a whole huge family? Abram didn't even have children, and he and Sarai were too old to have babies anymore, remember? Well, Abram knew that, but he believed God because God had just made him a promise, and Abram knew God always keeps his promises. Abram bowed down and made a special place there to worship God because he believed that one day God would give him that special, beautiful land. But not yet. God told Abram and Sarai to keep going, so they obeyed and traveled on. One day there was a battle, and one of Abram's family members was taken by God's enemies. Abram knew that God would protect them, so he gathered all his male servants and family and members and led them into battle. His army sneaked up on the bad guys at night, and God protected his people. They won the battle easily. In fact, Abram was so successful that the king of the land offered a blessing to him and to God because the king knew that Abram must be blessed by God. After that, God told Abram not to ever be afraid because God would always be his shield. But Abram was still sad that he and Sarai didn't have any children. He didn't understand how God could make a big family come from them and give them a special land where there were no children to start the family. God told Abram to go outside and look up at the night sky. It was as black as could be, except for the stars that glittered all across it. More stars than Abram could count. God promised that one day Abram and Sarai would indeed have a child, and from that child there would be grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and on until there were more children than all the stars in the sky. God told Abram that those children would be God's children too, his special chosen people. Even though Abram didn't know how that could be true or possible, he knew that God always tells the truth. So, Abram believed God and worshipped him, knowing that one day he would have a child and his family would live in the beautiful land God had promised to his people. And God was very pleased that Abram believed. This story is from Genesis 12 through 15. Now let's answer some questions. What did God tell Abram and Sarai to do at the beginning of the story? If God told you to go on a trip and leave your home, what would you take with you? What did God promise to give Abram and his family one day? And finally, what did God tell Abram about the stars in the sky? We hope you guys enjoyed your story tonight. We'll see you tomorrow at 7:30. Go out and be bold.